Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So we are here with the part 2 of acrylic painting guide series. Now this one is acrylic painting techniques we are going to talk about, and if you haven't watched the part 1 already, then go check that out. So without further more delay, let's get into the video. So there are a couple of techniques that we follow while working with acrylic painting or just working with acrylics. So number one being using dry brush directly on the surface. So if you just simultaneously compare the dry brush swatch along with a wet brush swatch, you would be able to see a clear difference between both of them, because the wet brush is actually being previously used, so it is going to be wet and there is going to be more preciseness and sharp edges as compared to the dry brush. Now dry brush swatch is going to differ from different brushes, different papers, so try playing around with it, try using different kinds of brushes and sheets, and you'll be able to see a texture difference in that as well. And that's about it. So moving on to the technique or the effect number 2, which is Scumbling Effect. This is mostly used while making clouds or bushes. So basically what you have to do is, right now I just used blue color to show you the cloudy effect, but otherwise you just paint one layer to show the other one. And using a dry brush, it shouldn't be wet at all. Using a dry brush, take some amount of paint and mostly just blot it on a piece of cloth or paper so that there's just minimum amount of paint on the brush, and move it in the manner as shown in the video. And there you go, you have your cloudy or the scumbling effect. Try using some bristly brushes, that will really help you in giving the texture. So next up on our list is Impasto Effect, which is my personal favorite effect. I freaking love this because it's just playing around with paint, and what you just have to do while using it is scoop some amount of paint, preferably a heavy body paint, using a palette knife, or if you don't have a palette knife then popsicle stick, and then you can use it as if you're applying butter on the paper, but creating some textures while applying butter, because again paints are as smooth as butter. And Impasto is basically all about texture, so try playing around with it. Next one, let's not actually call it an effect or technique or something, but rather a differentiation between soft edge and hard edge effects. As the name suggests, soft edge, the edges are going to be quite soft, which means it's going to blend along with the background at the edges, or it fades away. The concentration of the paint fades and lightens. Usually a chisel brush or a round brush is used. That too, it has to be completely dry, which is not used before. And while talking about the hard edges one, hard edge effect, as the name suggests, it's going to be hard at the edges, which means it's going to be crisp and quite precise, unlike the soft edge ones. It's probably used in intricate designs, creating intricate designs, and if not intricate, then complete the edges of something. And yes, an angular brush or a flat brush is used for this purpose, and a little bit of water to balance out the heavy body paint. Next up is Pt2 effect. In this, what you basically do is layer the surface with a particular color of your want and let it dry. And once it's dried, layer it up with preferably a heavy body paint of a different color, and then it's the most fun part to do. You have to, while it is wet, it's semi-wet or probably it's wet, you have to engrave or scratch some kind of designs you want to emboss the underneath or just reflect the underneath color. I have used like knife and bamboo stick and the back of my brush, but you can use anything like toothpick or maybe comb. Like there are a couple of things you can use for this. Next technique is the dripping one, which is traditionally performed by diluting the paint and tilting the surface you're working on to some angle while putting some paint drops, and then it would just drip. But since I had a small space to work on and show you guys illustrate, so I decided to use straw, which is never a bad idea, which we have been doing ever since we know. Like we have done it at some point of time in our life, and the results are quite exemplary as the dripping effect, the traditional dripping effect gives. So you need not worry about that. Talking about the next effect, that is using gel medium. Gel medium is a gel-like substance which is used to retard the pace of drying of the acrylic paint. We generally use it while working on canvases because while working on canvas the paint dries very quickly, and if you want to blend two colors together, the effect it's really difficult to blend two colors together if the color dries very quickly. So to retard the speed of drying, we use this. And there, if you use it more, the quantity as suggested in the back of the bottle, then of course you're going to get translucency, but if to avoid it you need to use decent amount of it. And just look at the swatch of the one where I've used it and the one where I haven't. Now next up on our list is wet on wet technique. So when we talk about wet on wet technique, it's not that you only use it with watercolors. You can even use with acrylics. It gives pretty good results, but not as good as the ones you get in watercolors. But while you are working completely with acrylics, you cannot use watercolors. So in that case, you can try out the wet on wet technique, wherein you just apply a very diluted form of a single color, or maybe you do not dilute but rather just use the water directly and tap around the other color of the paint, so that you would be able to see how the other color flows over the water or the diluted form of the other color. Now, if you know something about watercolors, you might be aware of what is masking fluid. Masking fluid is nothing but we apply it in order to avoid the paint to enter in those particular areas wherever it is applied. So in acrylics, I guess we don't have something as such. So instead we use masking tape to do that, and when we apply masking tape, the paint has to be like semi-wet, and while it is wet, just remove the masking tape. I know I messed up around while doing this, but you just have to remove it, and there you go, you have the paint only in the wanted parts and not in the unwanted parts. The next up on our list is the sponge effect, or the effect created using sponge or the sponge. I could not find sponge at my place, so I decided to use the rollers which had inbuilt sponge in it. So you basically just have to get the effect out of it, the texture out of it. So you have to spill some amount of paint on the area, and I accidentally spilled out a lot of paint, and then just create the effect as we do with brush or something, just to create that texture. Again, it's all about texture. So moving on to the next technique, which is the glazing technique or the glazing effect, and we actually use the glazing medium for this purpose, but just in case you don't have, you can use water as well, but of course it's not going to give as good results as the glazing medium would give you. So apply one kind of paint at the bottom layer, and when once it's dried, you can apply the second layer of paint over it, but that will include the glazing medium or some extra amount of water in it, so that the color on top of it is going to actually shine and glaze. The glazing effect is meant to be doing that actually. The next one is layering. Layering, in other words, we can say that mixing the colors randomly on the surface, but you don't actually mix it, okay? Like if I want to create some kind of trees which have white and red flowers, now it gives an illusion that the tree is pink, but it's actually not pink, but rather there are red flowers, or the red leaves and the white flowers are there. And the last on our list is splattering. Nothing special as such, but I had to include, and I included splattering, which we have been doing ever since like childhood, which is nothing but you take some amount of paint, most preferably the diluted form of paint, and you just spread it using your fingers. You take it on a bristly brush, or you can even use a toothbrush for this purpose. That would do great. And that's about it for this video. I hope you liked it, and if you did, then don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe, and also don't forget to follow me on different social media platforms. The link is in the description, and I'll meet you in the next one. Till then, goodbye.